Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm April Feilsteke from Atmosera, and I'm genuinely excited to share this session with you today because I know that we're all feeling the same tension in our organizations right now. We keep buying the right tools. We keep launching the right platforms, and yet somehow we're still not seeing the results we hoped for. Today isn't about a tool or a product pitch. It's a strategic conversation. It's about why the last mile, which is that space between rollout and real adoption, is where transformation either succeeds or stalls. In my work, I partner with organizations that are in highly regulated spaces in tech, in financial services, people doing very smart, very hard work. And the story's often the same. The investment's solid, the strategy is sound, the team is talented, and yet we see adoption stall. So today I want to walk you through why that happens and what you can do about it. We'll unpack a practical framework. I'm going to introduce real-world roles and rhythms that support adoption and hopefully help you walk away with a clearer map for what change can look like when it's done well. Whether you build that roadmap yourself or you want a partner like us to walk alongside you, there are options. If you don't know Atmosera, we are a strategic services firm that helps organizations go beyond simply implementing technology. We help them adopt it, embed it, and scale it for long-term success. You can see we're both Microsoft and GitHub partners, but we're also change leaders. So we pair technical change and depth with your tools so that your investment in your platform, tool, or process actually sticks. You can learn more about us at atmosera.com. And today I want to focus on something I think we all feel regardless of the tool, the tension between implementation and impact. So let's begin with a story, a real one, a global rollout, which is high stakes, and a quiet stall that almost no one saw coming until it did. This is an actual real story. A global insurance company that I worked with was processing millions of claims, wanted to launch a new workflow solution. And so my company was part of that. And this workflow was meant to standardize customer support, mailroom processing, underwriting, reviews, everything. The licenses were distributed. The training sessions were completed. Teams logged in. But by week 3, it was almost like an eerie silence. Usage wasn't just low, it was uneven. So some departments were trying it out, and others weren't sure if they were allowed to. And others just thought it was optional. In one retrospective, a team lead finally said what some of the others were thinking, which was, are we actually supposed to be using this? And that right there is the last mile problem. The tool was launched, but the support, the communication, the clarity on what it meant for people's jobs, that was missing. And this isn't unique. Tech isn't really the problem, change is. So we've seen this play out across industries, like I said, from financial services to healthcare to global logistics. It actually doesn't matter what you do. But a platform will go live, the emails go out, the dashboard says complete for all the tasks, and then everyone breathes a sigh of relief. But what happens next? People wait to see what others are doing. Managers revert to old routines, and the tool really just becomes another tab or window to ignore. You'll see adoption slow or worse, disappear entirely. And you'll start hearing things from your employees like, didn't we already launch that? Or I thought we were past the rollout. The reality is this: most tools don't fail because of poor technology. They stall because the human systems around them aren't ready. Let me tell you about what a client said to me one time that really stuck with me. They said, we implemented the solution, but we never really introduced it to the people who were supposed to use it. They did the project work, but they skipped the part that makes it personal, and that's where things broke down. Technology, yes, does introduce capabilities, but change introduces new behaviors, and new behaviors in employees don't just appear. They need time, safety, structure. And you don't need someone else to validate this for you, by the way. You can walk back through your last rollout and ask yourself, were expectations clearly defined across teams? Did managers reinforce the change in one-on-ones? Were champions or mentors identified in the organization early? And was feedback built into the post-launch? If not, you might be surprised, that's actually great news. You've just surfaced where the real work begins. When the project ends, change begins. And the teams that plan for that are the ones who get real adoption. So what causes this gap between launch and lasting use? Let's take a look at some of the common patterns that quietly derail adoption efforts and what we can do instead. If there's one phrase I could write into every RFP, every executive dashboard, every report, it's this: you cannot download behavior change into your employees. So here's typically what we see get skipped. First, we have unclear expectations. Are people supposed to use the tool during customer interactions and ticketing flows just for onboarding? If you have not said it explicitly, it is not clear to your employees. Second, no reinforcement. Are people getting positive feedback for trying? Not getting it right, but trying. Or are they quietly being told to go faster with no space to learn? Third, no support roles. If there's no mentor, no champion, no one modeling what good looks like for your employees, people are going to stay quiet. Or worse yet, they will completely disengage. And finally, no definition of success. I hate to say it, guys, but metrics do matter, but behavior matters more. So do your managers know what to look for beyond logins in a system? Going back to that insurance organization that I was talking about, they had also in that same project upgraded its case tracking system. The upgrade was better in every measurable way: faster, more secure, more integrated. But most users absolutely hated it. Why? Because no one talked to them about how their work would change. They heard about system benefits, but not behavior shifts. So they defaulted to the old way of doing things. And, you know, I'm sure it's no surprise, but behavior change doesn't follow the deployment plan at an organization. It follows trust. It follows safety. Change follows visible support. So if you're in this spot right now, draft a simple what to expect guide for each team. In that guide, talk about how you expect the work for each team to be impacted. Ask the leads on those teams, what did we miss? Are the changes we're asking for clear? Do we need to re-examine parts of this? And then one of the most impactful questions you can ask next: how are we going to reinforce the new behavior we expect from our employees? Just look for one champion or one early adopter using it and amplify their story in the organization. These are super low lift, high impact moves that any team can start right now. Remember, behavior change doesn't happen through access or even awareness alone. It happens through structure, clarity, and reinforcement. So if a launch isn't enough and training alone doesn't lead to real adoption, what does? Let's shift our thinking and explore a better model here. Let's take a step back and ask, what if we looked at this and treated change the same way we treat a product launch? Think about how your teams launch products or services today. You define value, you build for certain personas, you release that product iteratively, you monitor the usage of it, you gather feedback, you keep improving. But for change, we often do the exact opposite. We flip the switch, we send one email, we run one training, and then we hope. At Atmosera, we encourage clients to manage change like a product. It's not about making it complicated, it's about making it real. So here's what that looks like. Have a roadmap for adoption, not just a go live or launch date. Use personas to tailor enablement for different teams or user types, ones that are closely aligned to the work that those teams perform every day. Define success not just by usage, but by confidence, coaching, and consistency, and include a feedback loop to adjust and reinforce the change as you go. Just another brief story here. We worked with a team rolling out a CI/CD platform. The training was excellent, but 3 months in, usage had dropped off a cliff. The old system was still in place, and it's important to note here that all of the content needed for their workflows hadn't been migrated. So we had users saying, yeah, this is great, but I don't know when I'm supposed to use this or use the old one. And by the way, nobody else knows either. So why do I need to use this when the old system is there? Those people did not need more features. They needed structure and a really clear idea of why they should be using the new system, followed by reinforcement of the expected changes to their work. So what did we do to help? We added office hours. We added some peer reviews. We added some regular demos of the new tool, and usage jumped, confidence spread. So if you have this situation, here's what you can do on your own. Create a basic adoption backlog. Where are people stuck? Assign ownership of enablement like you would a product feature. Run weekly retrospectives on behavior, not just progress. Remember, if you only take one thing away from this webinar today, change is not a communication task alone. It's a product discipline. If you want adoption to succeed, treat it like any product rollout with structure, stakeholder engagement, and iteration. Adjust and make sure it's working. And if that structure sounds useful, let me show you the model that we use at Atmosera to guide this. We use something called the ADKAR model. ADKAR model is an industry standard. It's been around for over 25 years and was introduced by an organization called ProSci. It's our go-to framework for supporting people through change. And it's one you can adopt easily in your own organization. ADKAR stands for 5 outcomes every individual, every employee needs to move from what is this to this is how I work now. So again, remembering that this is individual and employee-based, here's the breakdown. Awareness. Do I understand why this change is happening? I mean, not that it just is. Desire. Do I want to support and participate in this change? This change involves personal decision. Knowledge. Knowledge, do I know how to change? Not that I'm going to change, but do I know how to apply this to the workflows that I do every day? And ability, can I actually apply it in my real work? And then finally, reinforcement. Will anything keep me from slipping back into my old behaviors? Now, these are all sequential elements. If someone lacks awareness, desire is not going to follow. If you skip reinforcement, the behavior is not going to last. So we're going to go deeper here into awareness because this is actually where most efforts stop and stall. So how can you build awareness and put that into action in your organization today? These are very basic things. You could put together an executive kickoff video for your next launch. Have this session led by a senior leader. Ideally, you want someone with authority and credibility in your organization. And it should be, a 3 to 5 minute recording that explains the why in very plain language, no business speak. The message should be focused on, here's why this change matters for the company and for you personally. This builds early trust and visibility into the change that's coming, and it makes the change feel real. Another thing you can do, hold some manager briefings. Have your change management leads or teams deliver these and host them by, have them hosted with local people leaders. The goal is to equip managers with simple, consistent talking points, and it will help your managers confidently answer, why are we doing this now? Why is this impacting us? Why? And they have answers for those questions. When managers can communicate clearly, adoption starts from a stronger place because people are more impacted by the messaging from the leaders that are actually closest to them in the org chart. Sorry, CEOs and CFOs. Another thing you can try, create a pre-launch frequently asked questions board. This is optional, but it can be incredibly powerful. This is where people can post their early questions. It can help change leads surface confusion and proactively address concerns before you move further into a rollout. And I like to encourage this one because you don't have to wait for the train to fall off the track. You don't have to wait for that resistance. You can actually proactively start managing it early. These activities aren't complicated, but they are intentional, and you can lead them yourself really with just a few hours of preparation, and it will make a big difference in how that change is accepted in your organization. So one client of ours skipped these steps. They launched right into enablement, and the result of that was that most of their users thought the tool was optional, not because they were actively resisting, but because no one had connected the dots for them. So how we helped, I mean, it sounds small, but we just added a simple 10-slide kickoff deck, and the next round of sessions landed completely differently. Awareness is not about telling people something once, it's about building context, repetition, emotional and personal connection to the change. It's just a starting point, but it's the really important foundation that everything else we're talking about today is built on. So we're going to quickly talk about the people who make change stick, right? These are the individuals who move through the change in an organization using the ADKAR model. And we're going to talk about how what they do makes that shift stick, because the behavior doesn't scale through plans alone, right? It scales through people, through the roles that we activate in our own organizations to support change. In every successful adoption journey we've supported, there are 4 roles that carry that behavior forward. And you may be saying to yourself, we don't have extra people. Guess what? We're not asking you to tap extra people. And it can be in a very time-limited way that you use these roles, but they each have very important critical roles: managers, champions, mentors, change leads. Let's walk through each one. So managers are really what I would like to call the amplifiers of change in an organization. So a manager or a supervisor. When a manager says, yes, this matters, and I've made time for it, that sends a signal that no communication plan can ever hope to match. But when they don't say anything, silence becomes the message, and people will fill that silence with all kinds of things that are sideways and not the intent. So what managers do to make change stick is they reinforce expectations of the change and how it's going to impact people in one-on-ones and team meetings. They create space for those employees to practice the technology, the process, and they normalize what I like to call being in the learning zone, where it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to try. It's more important to try than to get it right. And so what managers really need to do is reward progress with their employees and not just outcomes. So think about how you could do this in your organization right now. Give your managers 3 talking points per sprint or per month. Include adoption check-ins in their normal one-on-one agendas, just to make it feel more natural. It's not a separate meeting. And train your managers to ask their employees, hey, what's something new you tried this week? What would make it easier for you to keep using this? Managers don't have to be the experts on the change. They just need to communicate consistently with their employees. The next role that we're going to talk about here are champions. Champions are the ones who show what's possible. They don't just say, try this. They show how they tried it. So they will very visibly share wins in a Teams channel, a chat, in a retrospective, in a regularly scheduled team meeting, in a quarterly briefing. They'll post examples. They will demo the workflows that they're doing in all hands or syncs, and they make early adoption visible. So what you could do in your organization is nominate champions from from the teams who are already experimenting. It may not be with that specific tool, but they've shown that they're willing to experiment and try new things, and then give them a platform. Can you show this in next week's meeting? You could start a champions corner and put it in a newsletter or a chat tool. The visibility that champions bring makes behavior spread, and they make that change tangible for other people. So our next role are mentors, and these people are quiet guides. Not everyone is ready to raise their hand in public. I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise. That's where mentors come in. Mentors are often coworkers who offer calm, behind the scenes support. They're the people in your organization that others trust with a quiet, hey, can I ask you something? Or can you show me how to do this? You can tap into the mentors and ask them, hey, can you host in some drop-in office hours for other people on the team? Could you review workflows maybe once a week or every other week with some other people? And these mentors can help translate the training that your employees receive into actual action, into their standard operating procedures, into the tasks they do every day. The thing that's really key about mentors is that they can actually help you catch friction points in your change early, and they can help you get past that. And when you hear themes, you can plan for those themes to overcome them. So how can you use mentors right now? Identify some trusted, patient teammates, employees. They don't have to just be power users. They don't have to be amazing with technology, but they do have to be trusted. And ask them to support some small groups in your organization. Give them a signal boost. You know, like say to your team, if you've got some questions, reach out to Alex. She's seen this before. One mentor can change the experience for 5 people. So our last people are the change leads. So you may not have a defined team, but think of these as people who are going to be tasked with orchestrating the change in your organization. Change leads keep it all moving. They don't necessarily train or manage people, but their job is to connect everything together for your employees. They are going to be the people who track sentiment and adoption signals. They're going to be the ones who adjust the reinforcement plan. They're going to be the ones who keep champions, mentors, and managers aligned. And finally, they're going to surface gaps in your plan and help coordinate any sort of pivots that need to happen in the organization. So how could you put this into action in your organization? Assign one person to own adoption follow through. I would actually suggest that it be an individual contributor instead of a manager, if you can make time and space for that. Give them access to feedback and leadership. They need to be able to communicate with leadership on the regular about what they're seeing. Have them lead some short adoption stand-ups every 2 weeks. These people don't need to be loud. They just need to be listening, because change in an organization is social and it spreads through people and trust. So if you activate these roles, adoption in your organization will grow organically. They don't need to be formal titles. They just need to be intentional. So at one client, we just asked them, who do people already go to for help? That became their mentors. Then we asked them, you know, who's already playing around with this and talking about it? Those became our champions. Then we gave them language, recognition, and rhythm. And that's how change scaled from the inside out. Name these roles from your current rollout, even informally. Add one champion to each team. Schedule a 30-minute sync just for your mentors. And ask your managers to lead by modeling, not just by mandating. You already have these people. You just need to activate them. If you want change to last, don't rely on the process. Build your network of people, trusted, visible, consistent, and let them lead. They are not your backup plan. They are the plan. We're going to just real quick take a temperature check with everybody. Now that you've heard about the key roles that support adoption, I'd love to hear from all of you. which of these support roles do you guys currently have defined in your organization or are at least partially active? I think, Rachel, were you going to help with the polling there?
Yes, I just launched it. If you look under the polls, you'll be able to see.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like it's still being distributed. Rachel, is that correct?
Excuse me. Yes, I just shut it off.
Okay. All right. So thanks everybody. Thanks for responding there. Your answers are really helpful, and it's actually not uncommon if some roles are still forming or not formally named yet in your organization. Really, what matters most here is intention. Even one active champion or manager reinforcing behavior can make a huge difference. So with those roles in mind, let's talk about how we can structure the broader change journey. Because whether you're launching a new platform, reviving a stalled rollout, or scaling adoption across multiple teams, the same three-phase framework can guide your strategy. So now that we've looked at the individuals and who can help experience change and lead change through ADKAR, let's look at the bigger picture, because real adoption, as I said earlier, it doesn't happen in isolation. It needs a system around it. So at Atmosera, we guide clients through a three-phase change enablement framework. It's not proprietary. It's a model that any organization can apply with or without outside help. So let me walk you through it. So in phase one, that's what we call strategy and alignment. Before anything goes live, we suggest you pause and listen. We ask these questions. What are people afraid of? Where are the blockers? Where's the friction hiding? Who are the quiet or early advocates that you haven't tapped yet? In this phase, we focus on aligning leadership messaging, mapping personas and readiness, setting clear goals for behavior, not just tool use, and we define what good looks like before we train. So if you're leading change yourself, this is where you would start. You don't need a full change office. You need one clear answer to who's being asked to change and are they ready? And this is where desire starts to come into play. Awareness helps people understand the why. Desire helps them decide if they want to support it. And sorry to say you can't manufacture desire, but you can create the conditions where it grows naturally in your organization. And that happens when people feel like this change was designed with them and not just at them. So phase two, this is enablement and change management. This is where the training happens, but it's not just training. In this phase, we activate the champions who lead by example, the mentors who quietly support things behind the scenes, and the managers who are going to normalize that shift during team routines. Feedback loops that let people voice what's working and what's not. So who are people already turning to for help? Make those people your allies in this phase. Phase three is optimization and continuous improvement. By this point, the change is live. People are using the tool. You're starting to see some momentum, but here's the reality. Behavior doesn't lock in by accident. It sticks when you reinforce what's working and adjust what's not. This phase is all about scaling, sustaining, and supporting the long-term evolution of the change in your organization. So let me show you what that looks like. Generally, it includes, facilitating retrospectives focused on behavior, celebrating and amplifying what works, updating governance. Too many teams stop after enablement. And we've had clients come to us post-launch. Teams were confused that usage was patchy or spotty. So we use this framework to retroactively guide them through each phase. And they went from being disengaged to self-sustaining. You can do the same at your company, whether you build it yourself or ask us to support you. This framework is where adoption becomes the culture of your organization, where tools stop being new and start being normal. So together, these three phases, strategy and alignment, enablement and change management, optimization and continuous improvement, these form the full system we use with our clients to turn launch into lasting impact. And whether you build it yourself or ask us to walk you through it with you, this is the map that we use to help move people forward with confidence. So let's take a quick look, a closer look at phase one and why most failed rollouts skip it entirely. So strategy and alignment. Raise your hand, either figuratively or literally, if your last rollout began with a big, shiny, bold announcement. And now I'm going to ask you to be honest with yourself. How long did that impact of that announcement actually last? The truth is, most rollouts start with intention, but not alignment. We send a message. Maybe we host a training, but we don't always check if people are ready to hear it, let alone act on it. And then what? Maybe some people skimmed your announcement. Definitely some people ignored it. They did not open the announcement at all. And some people probably opened it up and said, wait, is this for us? The truth is, most rollouts begin with intention, but not with alignment. So we announce, we hope, and then we're surprised when engagement lags. So that's where phase one of our framework, strategy and alignment, comes in. So let's walk through how we approach this. Alignment means three things. People understand the why at their level. They see their role in the change. They're invited into it before it's imposed on them. So here's how you do that without a lot of overhead. First, define the why for each of your audiences. What motivates a customer support lead isn't what motivates a help desk user or an underwriter or a developer. An ops manager in the mailroom needs different framing than a technical lead. So when we say alignment, we mean localized clarity. Try this for yourself. Make a list of your stakeholder groups. For each of those groups, define their version of why this change matters. Next, map personas and readiness. Who's excited? Who's skeptical? Who's quietly overwhelmed? Who doesn't want change to happen because that's the way we've always done it? You don't need a full change team to do this. Just start with 3 columns: advocates, cautious observers, unengaged or resistant. Then ask, what do each of these groups need to hear so that they can feel and see the change happening and feel like they can move forward, right? Like, define each of these personas' starting points, their motivators, their concerns. And if you spent the time to do this, your rollout plan starts to sound like them and not like you. This exercise should really only take about 45 minutes, and it's going to help you uncover quiet friction before it becomes resistance. So let's talk about audience-specific messaging for a second. This should be led by your change leads or your communication partners. Craft the story differently for each stakeholder group. A support lead doesn't care about the same things as an architect. Use that same core message, but translate it through each group's lens. Here is why this helps your team. Here is how this change or this tool connects to what matters most in your role, to you. Now let's talk about, real quick, feedback before finalization. Champions and managers should really get in the habit of sharing early drafts of communications or rollout plans before they send them out. They should check in with people. Does this make sense? What would land better? People don't resist what they have helped shape. So, like at one client, we showed the draft announcement to 4 frontline team members, and their feedback, was pretty sharp but helpful. Hey, this sounds like a vendor wrote this. Can we rewrite this to say it like we talk here? Let's use our language. So we made those changes. And when the final message landed, people listened. The next thing you want to do is really try to surface, early advocates and what I'll call hidden blockers. Every organization has quiet champions. Those are the people who just get it. Find them, empower them, let them speak up early, and at the same time, look for some friction. What's not being said? What team hasn't shown up to the table yet? Even just naming those gaps gives you leverage so that you can adjust. And really, finally, in this phase, you want to establish the roles. Decide who your champions and mentors will be. Brief them on what their role is in the organization. Talk to your managers and make sure that they understand how their visible support and follow-up ties directly how successfully the adoption of the tooling or process in your organization is going to be. At the end of the day, people don't resist change. They resist feeling excluded from it. So if you find yourself here, run a 15-minute alignment scan. Who are the audiences? What do they need to know? Who can help shape the story? Invite feedback before you finalize the plan. You'll catch gaps early and gain allies fast. Alignment is not about getting everyone to agree, because that's just not going to happen. It's about showing them they matter before you ask them to move. So last thing to remember from this slide, start with listening, not broadcasting. When you do, you're not just launching a tool or a process change. You're creating the conditions where people will feel safe and ready to engage. And once the alignment is in place, we're going to move into enablement. And that's where you'll see people stop waiting and start experimenting. So enablement and change management. This is where the change starts to become visible, not just because the tool has been turned on or people get access or training was held or recorded, but because people start interacting with it. And what they need in this phase isn't just instruction. They need support. We call this enablement and change management for a reason. Not enablement in the form of a one-size-fits-all training module. Enablement is human, it's role-based, and it's sustained. It's where the knowledge turns into a capability for your employees, and capability turns into confidence. So let me break down the core elements of this phase and how you can start activating them yourself. So as I noted, this is the phase when you want to do your live training and self-service content. It's important to remember that people learn in different ways and on different timelines. Some people want a structured walkthrough. Some people want a lecture. Other people want to explore the tools at their own pace. Think back to your own learning experiences. What worked for you? Your employees, you have employees who learn differently as well. So you need both types of training. If you don't currently have a learning management system, an LMS, host a watch party. Have one person screen share while others are following along. Or record a live demo once and post it for people to see. Create a how to get started page that lives in a wiki or in SharePoint or Confluence. Build a channel like solution questions or how did I do it channel in Teams. The takeaway here is that you don't assume that everyone's going to absorb information the same way or on the same day, so you give them multiple ways to find it. So the next things we're going to do in enablement and change management is we identified these people before, but now we're going to activate mentors and champions who are going to create psychological safety. They are creating safe spaces, and they are someone who helps, as we've said earlier, people quietly learn. So what we're going to do in this phase is we're going to ask them, hey, will you hold some 15-minute open coaching slots on a weekly or bi-weekly basis? Mentors, we're going to ask you, hey, host some drop-in hours for us. Make yourself available in Teams to answer some questions. The mentor's goal in this phase is not about perfection. It's providing reassurance to people that they're, them trying things and doing things is correct. Just the trying itself. Champions, the way we're activating these folks in this phase is we're going to have them model success publicly. We're going to have them show other employees what's possible in meetings, chat threads, team rituals. They're not going to push, they're going to share, and they're going to normalize the change. They'll post, how I did it. They'll demo some small wins. They are going first in your organization. So, in a company that we worked with, we asked champions to post some short videos of how they were using some AI tools in their workflows, and posted them in an area where other people could see them pretty easily. And people started replying to these videos, hey, wait, I didn't know you could do that. Can you show me more? When you start seeing that kind of chatter, that's how you know the enablement is working. So the next thing we're doing in this phase is creating room to practice without the pressure. Learning doesn't stick if people are afraid to fail. And that's where your managers come in. We are going to be coaching the managers to do 3 things. Make time for your employees to learn. Add a 30-minute experimentation block during the sprint. Or say, this week's retro is going to include something that you tried. What you want to do is normalize the awkward stage, right? You're not supposed to be good at this yet. What felt weird or unexpected? Keep trying. It'll stick. The other thing we're asking managers to do during this phase is recognize effort, not just outcomes. Hey, thanks for trying that out. Yeah, that matters a lot more than great job. It really does with employees when it comes to change. And it tells people, hey, it's okay to try. It's okay to not get it right. We're learning this together. And then the last kind of bit that I really want to call out in this phase is, listening actively. These learning loops that we're talking about here depend on feedback. So what we do is we help clients set up short feedback surveys. We do like kind of what's working, what's weird prompts, either in Teams or through an email. We'll do kind of some real-time reaction boards or chats. So, don't wait for feedback to be perfect. Listen to what's already happening and make the adjustment. If you keep hearing the same questions in stand-ups, that's not a problem. It's an opportunity to create a shared frequently asked question or to host a 10-minute refresher on something. Finally, managers, you're enforcing that learning in the day-to-day. Those managers are shaping the momentum. So when they say in this phase to employees, yes, this matters, people listen. When they reinforce behavior in one-on-ones, it sticks. So just give your managers a short script. How's the tool working for you this week? What's getting in the way? That alone is going to change the tone in your organization, because change doesn't land when we explain it better. It lands because we support it longer. So again, what can you do on your own in this phase? Just appoint some informal mentors and champions who are already willing to be seen and promote usage. Have them run some lightweight demos. Use your existing team meetings to normalize learning. And start with one team. You don't have to do it all at once. Build from there. At Atmosera, we help scale these systems, but any organization can start building this out today. This phase is about consistency, week after week. It's about demonstrating progress with the proper support in place. So if you create a structure where people can ask and learn and test and reflect, your people are going to take these steps forward together. You will see a behavior shift because confidence is what fuels real adoption. So let's move on to the third phase, which is optimization and continuous improvement. This is really where we, make the change stick. You've launched your tool or process change. People are using it. You've got some success stories and wins starting to show up. That's fantastic. Here's the real question. How do you make that momentum last and not just fade into the background? In 2 or 3 months, what's going to make this stick? Because let's be honest, adoption fades without reinforcement. If no one's reinforcing the behavior or the change that's expected, people assume the urgency is past and they stop doing it, or they revert to what's familiar, or they wait to be told again. So this phase, optimization and continuous improvement, is where many programs actually start to fade. But it's also where the most powerful gains happen, because this is where behavior becomes habit and habit becomes culture. So let's talk about what those rhythms look like in this phase. So, in phase 3, we want to run retrospectives that are not focused on outcome, but on behavior. This could be done by managers, team leads, scrum masters, champions, doesn't matter, but somebody who's already talking to those people. And ask the team, what did we try that was new this sprint? What did this process or tool help us to do? Where did we get stuck? What's working? What's frustrating? This questioning in a regular way in team meetings that are already occurring does two things. It builds space to reflect, and it normalizes the learning process. Because when you invite reflection on behavior, you give people permission to grow. So use retrospectives, quick polls, or 5-minute check-ins during a stand-up. You don't need formality, you need feedback. The next thing here is success sharing rituals. Anyone in the team, it could be sponsored by a champion or change lead, but what you want to do is round up quick wins once per sprint or once a month, kind of whatever cadence works in your organization. It could be asynchronous, like in a Teams thread, for example, or it could be shared in a stand-up, but it could be titled something like, oh, this surprised me, or this helped me. You don't need a metrics dashboard to know that change is starting to take root with your employees. You need stories, because stories travel and they stick with other people. So, create a how I used it channel where maybe, a junior developer could share a new approach that saved her 30 minutes. But at the end of the day, what you want is have other people see that and then feel okay trying it. That's reinforcement in motion. The next thing that I kind of want to hit on that should happen during this phase is peer recognition. This should be led by the managers, team lead supervisors, or peers. And what you want to be doing in this phase is celebrate the people who are helping others to adopt. Hey, Jason, thanks for showing us that in the workflow. Nina, thanks for answering the questions that people were asking you. These are the people who are going to build cultural permission to change. And when we reinforce these people and we recognize them for the work that they're doing for the rest of the org, we reinforce the behavior that we're looking for. So you can even try a rotating champion of the week if you want. Invite someone to demo a prompt in the next sync, just have them do that. And then recognize people for taking the time to do that. People need recognition for the effort, not the outcome. And then finally, what happens in this phase is what I'm going to call evolution loops, right? So we want to spend time updating playbooks, standard operating procedures, team norms. If a change is real in your organization, it should show up in things like onboarding guides, standard operating procedures, work instructors, team agreements, right? It needs to be led by operations partners, managers, or other enablement roles. And what they need to be doing here is reflecting on what's working and update the playbook. If it's not showing up in instructions, then that change is meaningless and it's not going to be carried forward. So you need to have those internal examples updated to include the new process or technology. And you might also want to include here internal examples, that point to some of the training videos that you did in the previous phase, whether it's self-service or just a recording of someone trying something. And then update your onboarding documentation with real user stories so that a new employee or somebody who's switching to a different role in the organization can see how that tool shows up in the work that they do every day. And then, quite frankly, just as you're going through this, refine what good looks like for a role or for a team based on the usage patterns you're seeing with your employees. When you evolve your materials based on real feedback, you show people that their learning matters. So you create a loop. They try, you notice, you adapt, they try again. Finally, in this phase, what you want to do is hand off ownership to internal leaders. Your champions and mentors can't carry this forever. So ask who's already leading without being asked, who's helping others, formalize that leadership, and then when you've gotten through these phases, pass it back to the people who need to carry this forward, right? People don't need to be reminded with more urgency. They don't need an email blast telling them to do something. They need to be recognized for showing up with consistency. And that's how you make change sticky and not loud. So you don't need a formal change program forever, but you do need to keep reinforcing what's working. Okay, so kind of moving on here, just a real quick poll for you guys. Where do you think your team struggles the most during change right now? I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that. Yeah, getting people to care or engage. That was the area where I saw the most answers here. You know, when you think about your team or your last rollout, you know, there's no wrong answer to this, but what I'm going to say is think about how you just answered that. That's going to help you reflect on where your focus might need to go next time you do this, or if you want to recover from this now. So 4 foundations really are the other things I want to leave you with as you think about change. Let's say you've done everything right, training, messaging, enablement, but adoption still feels fragile in your organization. So here's the truth. Even the best adoption plan will collapse without the right systems underneath it. Because adoption doesn't just rely on people doing the change, it relies on the environment around them. And this is what this slide is about. Let's quickly talk about the 4 foundations that either support or sabotage adoption efforts over time. And you can assess all of these 4 starting today in your organization. Culture. Culture is what people do when no one is watching. If people see other people trying, asking questions, learning aloud, they'll feel safe to do the same. But if they see things like silence, skepticism, or snide remarks, they're going to quietly back away. So here's what you can do to reinforce the right culture in your organization. Highlight effort, not just perfection. Say thanks for giving it a go. It matters more than great job. Share those stories about experiments, even the failed ones. Invite champions to talk about what didn't work and what they learned. Structure. Bake change into the work itself. Structure is all about rituals, norms, and workflows. Ask yourself, is the new behavior reflected in stand-ups or meetings? Is it being reviewed during existing review processes like an architectural review, a retrospective, a stand-up meeting? Are decisions being made with the new tool in mind? If not, here's what you can do. Add a new field to your review templates. How did you use the tool here? What did we try this last week as a standing retrospective question? Reflect the change in those standard operating procedures, the checklists, and feedback loops. If the structure doesn't reflect the change, the people won't either. Talent. This is, if you want adoption to scale, it has to show up in how people are hired, evaluated, and rewarded. Ask yourself, do your job descriptions mention adaptability? Are your performance reviews recognizing early adoption? Are managers acknowledging those that are helping others? If they're not, include contributes to adoption as a bullet in performance goals or performance reviews. When you're interviewing somebody for a position, ask questions like, tell me about a time you had to learn a new tool in flight. Right? These are the types of behaviors you want to see in your organization, but it doesn't just happen naturally. You need to be intentional about making it happen through the talent and how you reward and look at performance and hire people. And finally, governance. Governance defines what's good, what's not, and who decides that. Good governance doesn't restrict behavior. What it does is it builds clarity and confidence for your employees. Without it, teams are going to hesitate. Am I doing this right? Is this allowed? What if I get it wrong? Here's what we help our teams, that we work with put in place. What good looks like one-pagers, some guardrail guides. Try this, avoid this. Clarify the rules, for making decisions about adoption boundaries. Governance matters because if it's unclear, people freeze. When governance is visible and approachable, they move forward. So when change fades, it's rarely because the tool fades. The tool failed. It's because one or more of these 4 systems was either misaligned or completely missing. These are not nice to haves. These are what hold adoption in place. So pick one pillar to assess this month. Audit your team rituals. Do they support or ignore the change? And ask yourself, where does this show up in our expectations? You can start small, but start real. Because sustainable change isn't about pushing harder, it's about reinforcing smarter. So if all of this sounds familiar, I just want to say, hey, let's pause for a reality check. You're not alone. Maybe you're thinking, we did a lot of this already and it still didn't stick. And if that's you, you're not behind, you're in good company. Here are things we hear all the time. We rolled this out, now what? We don't even know what good adoption looks like. These aren't signs of failure, they're signs of missing structure. And that's exactly what the last mile is about. If you had no phase 2, you'll hear, now what? If you had no reinforcement, you'll hear usage is slowing down. If you had no champions, you'll hear no one's leading it. If you had no success criteria defined, people ask, what does good look like? Every single one of these things are repairable. The problem isn't resistance, it's uncertainty. So add those things in. You don't need to reboot everything. You don't have to start from scratch, but start with checking where people are at in AdCar. Clarify roles, relaunch one behavior change that you want to see, and celebrate some of those small wins. The path to adoption of change in an organization is rarely linear. It's rarely linear. Most teams need a second moment of clarity, and this webinar might be yours. So if you've heard these quotes, you're not stuck, you're just ready for something better. So let's talk about how Atmosera helps teams build that better last mile. We are focused on delivering change that scales, because building behavior once is not going to make it stick, but repeating it across teams, across systems, across time, it takes a system. So that's what we help our clients build, not just adoption, not just a rollout, but reinforcement at scale. So we help and provide hands-on support at every level in an organization, no matter what roles you have. We help you structure peer-based enablement models, and we have a proven framework that we've used repeatedly that can help mitigate resistance in your organization. And we try and meet you where you are. So avoid that last mile failure. Take a look and see, are you ready? Have you mapped your roles? Do you have a plan to reinforce and not just launch? Have you applied change management even after a rollout? If not, let Atmosera help you. Like I said before, if the tools are already live, you can run a short pulse check, you can map those personas to tailor support, you can identify and activate internal champions and mentors, and then you can reinforce usage through live demos, playbacks, or reviews. Relaunch the adoption messaging with a clear plan. So if you find yourself here and you're like, wow, that's a whole lot, not sure we can do that all by yourself, I'd like to welcome you to schedule a free consultation with Atmosera. We can talk with you about where you are and where you want to be, whether you're planning a new rollout, you're mid-implementation, or you want to reinforce adoption after a launch. Please help us, reach out to us and we can help you. We can help with strategy sessions, persona mapping, reinforcement plans, team coaching. There's going to be a poll that launches at the end of the webinar where if you'd like to talk more, we'll follow up with you based on that polling. So just in closure today, one, I want to thank you guys for coming, but remember, change doesn't happen to employees. Change happens with them. So I'd just like to thank you for your time today and your attention, and please look for that survey and hope to hear from you soon.